You're watching the PoliticIt Podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt Podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson. We've got Kevin Greene with us from AFP.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Americans for Prosperity.
Yep, Americans for Prosperity.
So let's talk a little bit about you, Kevin. You've been working with them for a number of years, and now you're the state director, right?
Yeah. I came on board in 2018, so I've been here almost 7 years, and then just over the last 2 years, been our state director.
Oh, sounds exciting. So were you the assistant director before?
Yeah, so I was our deputy director for a number of years before that. So
let's talk a little bit about you. Where were you educated? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I am originally from Seattle, but grew up in Utah County. Went to high school there, UVU, and then law school up at the University of Utah. Graduated there in 2016.
So you're a lawyer.
I don't practice, and I don't like the title.
Oh,
yeah.
So how'd you get into political things?
Yeah, I was the UVU College Republicans president for a couple of years when I was going to undergrad there, and I initially got involved on Mike Lee's first Senate campaign, and then kind of been leading the liberty and freedom charge here in Utah since then, and been involved with any number of.
So let's talk a little bit about that liberty and freedom cause. What do you mean by that?
Limited government, keeping government in its proper role, constitutional principles, letting people live their own lives, find their own American dream without the burden of government on our backs, excess taxes and regulations, all these things that hold people back from really succeeding.
So it sounds like you're a fiscal conservative.
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
With more libertarian leanings, is that right?
I like to call myself a small L libertarian. So not a member of the party,
right?
But yeah, very very libertarian in my approach to government and freedom, and I think.
And that's kind of the national thing with AFP, right?
Yeah, it's a very limited government, center-right organization that really fights for these ideals across the entire country in every one of our state chapters, just lowering government's burden in the lives of the citizens of this country.
So what types of things do you do at AFP then?
Yeah, so ultimately we're a grassroots organization. So what we try to change government by building grassroots movements to help accomplish those things. So getting volunteers and activists involved, educated on policy, educated and trained on how to actually be impactful with the legislative process or whatever it might be, and really building that movement of millions to affect change. As a state senator, I know when you hear from a number of constituents and you see the grassroots and the people involved, that kind of strikes an alarm in your mind, like, hey, people are paying attention to this, they care about this issue, and I think that really does help drive the change we're trying to see.
So let's go to the last legislative session.
Yeah.
You worked on a number of bills that you helped really get the grassroots involved with it, right?
Yep.
So what were some of the ones that you guys worked on?
Yeah, so we had 3 top priorities this last legislative session amongst a number of other issues. The first is the ban on collective bargaining, HB 267. So we were very involved in that, getting the grassroots involved, educated on what that policy really is, why it's a good direction for the state to take. And we were up there almost every day with our grassroots volunteers, talking to legislators, connecting them with their individual lawmakers, and really having that face-to-face conversation. There was a lot of noise and loud opposition on the other side, and so we really tried to.
So what was your major concern with this bill?
Yeah, so no concern with the bill,
right?
But why we supported it, I think. Fundamentally, the relationship between public sector unions and private unions is different because the bargaining agents involved and who's impacted is really, that's where the difference is. Taxpayers are on the hook for decisions made between, public sector unions and employees and the government. And we are the ones left out of the table. Taxpayers don't have a say when those negotiations are going on, but we end up paying whatever agreed upon amount is
So is it fair to say then that AFP has a kind of a mission to protect taxpayers?
Absolutely. That first and foremost, that is what we do: protect taxpayers and advocate for things across the country that protect taxpayers.
So yeah, on 267. It's funny. It bothered me when I saw the Superintendents Association out marching with the union. And, in a general collective bargaining situation that's a private sector, you have management whose primary responsibility is to promote shareholder wealth, right? And then you have the unions that are protecting the workers. And so there's that genuine kind of,
there's a natural give and take. Yeah. So each people kind of advocating for their side. Yeah. But when it's a superintendent versus teacher, where's the taxpayers there? Because the superintendent doesn't work for the taxpayers, right, necessarily. Yep. Yeah, they work for the industry itself, right, within the education realm.
So that tension it just doesn't exist the same way.
And I like to refer to it kind of as a race to the bottom when it comes to public sector negotiating and collective bargaining, because the government, there's no real risk of running out of money, right? It's just with a private company and its employees that natural tension exists, and both have to come out ahead. Otherwise, a company can go under, or you're not going to have any employees. But with the government,
so when legislators do that, they have to be concerned of both sides of that equation, right? Because there is that tension. You want to make sure you're protecting the education system, right, and educating children, but you also have to be accountable to taxpayers, and so you've got that genuine tension there, right? And it's bothered me because the last two raises we gave to teachers, the unions actually opposed because we didn't do it the way they wanted.
And I mean, you guys get a lot of flack for underfunding or not giving money right, but you have done it directly, because that's where we should be spending money. That's where the priority should be: the educators, the classroom. And I think there's people who prefer control, and they get access to that money and get to dictate where it goes, versus that direct, let's give it to the people educating the children of this state. They've adamantly opposed both times in recent history where it was a direct raise to teachers, and the UEA and other organizations just vehemently oppose that.
Yeah, while they promote things that parents don't necessarily want, right? And as a legislator, we have to respond to the wishes of parents too. I always find that funny that we're some. The union actually should be working with the legislature to promote teacher interest. Rather than casting us as the bullies.
Absolutely.
So that makes it kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your work with that. What types of things did you do to help with that bill?
Yeah, so we had a digital and a media campaign running through the legislative session, connecting to voters. Here's what this policy does. Click the link, sign the petition, contact your legislator, that kind of stuff. And then on the ground, daily up at the Capitol, just doing that citizen voices, connecting with their legislators and talking about that issue. I spoke in both committee hearings in favor. And so, we do, the tactics are wide ranging, but really hitting every touch point that we can to be impactful on legislation.
So does something like this then go to a national group that tells you what to do, or how do you make decisions on that? Who do you respond to?
So obviously AFP is a national organization, and so we have key principles and key beliefs, and so that guides where each state chapter is going to prioritize our work. I don't get any directives to run this legislation or help on this or support this. It is this is aligned with what we believe as an organization, and really a possibility in Utah right now. So I can prioritize where we spend our resources and our time, and really.
So is there a way for you to get access then to money from the national organization? How does that work?
Yeah, so our state chapter We have
pretty
37
independent in a way.
Yeah. So but we have donors across the country that we're blessed to, have. It gives us jobs and the ability to do the work we're doing. So we have, we operate independently as state chapters and driving the priorities here, but under the umbrella of, well, this is what AFP exists to advance across the country.
And the way they put a check on you is by hiring you. They know what you believe, and they kind of leave you alone in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come right back.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We're here with Kevin Greene from AFP, Americans for Prosperity. Nice to have you, Kevin. During the break, we talked a little bit about some of the other priorities that you have. This prosperity campaign that you have going on across the country, why don't you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, so Protect Prosperity is our national campaign, and really what we are driving towards right now is making sure Congress extends and makes permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts. If we don't have that happen, the average Utah family is going to see a tax hike of over $1,500 per year, which is...
That's the average.
That's the average, yeah. So obviously some are going to be a lot higher, and that's a very impactful amount of money, especially over the last 4 years where we saw inflation skyrocket and the cost of living just continue to drive upwards.
So where's that at right now? How's that going nationwide?
So, nationwide, our campaign is rocking. We've got, like I said, 37 state chapters. We're present in all 50 states, and we are doing, constant events with members of Congress, members who are opposing. We've got, protests going on outside their offices. We've got digital billboards going across the country, spreading that message like, hey, do you want to pay $1,500 more per year? Some states, are as high as $3,000 or more. And so, it's going really well. Congress is, as you know, working on all of this right now.
So my understanding from Speaker Johnson and stuff is that that's a pretty high priority for the Republicans right now, right?
Getting that through the reconciliation process right now in Congress is top priority for the Speaker, for the President. And so I think we're kind of seeing things play out between the House and the Senate. But I think we're going to see something, some real momentum this summer on getting.
So have you been working with our delegation then? Or?
Yeah, so we are blessed in Utah to have a great delegation, all on board with these priorities and these policies. We've had several members do events with us in our office
on this very topic.
So we had Congressman Owens with us a couple weeks ago on tax day, actually. So we celebrated everybody's favorite day, April 15th, by really driving home, this day next year is going to be much more painful if we don't get this across the finish line this year. And so, we had the congressman in there talking about those priorities and how that's going to happen.
But our whole delegation's on board with that.
They're great and fully aligned with getting these policies through and passed and helping the American people and Utah.
So how does that work nationally with your organization on something like this, where it's really, you stated before that you have autonomy, a lot of autonomy, but then when these national things come out, you focus resources there too.
Yeah, so we, in state, we have our state chapter and our state priorities that we really get to drive. What's the reality in Utah? What's the focus?
Those two things in Utah right now would probably be this union bill, right? 267, and then the Fits-All scholarship.
Yeah, so we were very involved in passing Utah Fits-All a couple of years ago, and the whole school choice movement in the state in general. And so, we're obviously very concerned about the court case and where that's going, and so we're really we're working on that as a priority right now as well.
You know, as I read through that court case, all I could think of, given that Fits All actually has a priority for lower income families, right? All I could think of is the only thing that judge is doing in terms of protecting. I mean, she talks about protecting families, protecting children. All she's doing is making it harder for low-income kids to opt out of public education system.
It was 95 or more % of the original allocation went to the lower income threshold. So that's right, 9,500 students in that low income who would never have that access to the private education or to the homeschooling resources they need without this program. And so it's...
Well, I love the way that was marketing when you talk about Fits All. You know, the whole idea was just allowing parents to pick an education that works for their child.
And that's what we should be doing. Education, children should not have to fit education. Education should absolutely fit every child's unique need. Kids are not all the same. They don't have the same learning.
So there may be some kids in a family, maybe one of the kids opts out of the public system to go to a private school, or maybe even homeschool, right, as a solution to that.
Yeah, and I think that's what education really should be. It should be about teaching kids how to learn, how to think, not what to learn, not what to think. And if the system or the educational path that they're on isn't working, I think it should be incumbent on us to help figure out what program needs to exist to allow them to find that alternative.
So how do people get involved with you? Tell me a little bit about your organization in terms of, you know, you do have employed people that are there full time, right? And then you have a lot of volunteers that you work with. Tell me how that works. How does someone get involved with you?
So I would first look at one of our social media pages, Americans for Prosperity Utah, or our website, prosperityelevated.com. And then that's where you can find out how to connect with us and contact us. But we're at Thanksgiving Point in Lehigh. That's where our main office is. And we're holding events all the time on different things. So whether it's a policy, forum on Utah Fits All, or this union bill, or other priorities we're working on, or a member of Congress is coming in, or other state legislators. And then we also do a lot of trainings on how to actually get involved, how to be impactful, how to lobby your legislator, how to things as simple as how to draft an op-ed, how to write a letter to the editor to really help drive the messaging on a lot of these things. And so we're constantly doing stuff all over the place, trying to be all over the state and really build that movement of activists in Utah.
Yeah, so that's Prosperity Elevated?
Yep, so we our play on the state's motto of Life Elevated, so prosperityelevated.com
and that's the Utah chapter.
That is our Utah chapter's website.
So if people go to Americans for Prosperity, that'll be the national.
Yep, and there's also if you go to americansforprosperity.org, you can find a drop-down menu for Utah, which will then take you to our page.
Prosperity Elevated. Yep. I know on the bottom of our of this podcast online at PoliticIt.com, we actually have a link back to you.
Yep.
So one other thing that you mentioned when we started was this whole idea of the REINS Act. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So the REINS Act has been a big priority for Senator Mike Lee, trying to get this through at the congressional level for quite a long time. I think we're going to get it in this upcoming congressional session as well, so fingers crossed. But what the REINS Act does, so it stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny. And so, the legislature or Congress passes laws, and then that's handed off to executive branch agencies to really figure out how to implement through regulations. Oftentimes, I think that can be extremely burdensome. It can stretch the intent of a bill. It can make life very expensive. And so we passed one actually this year in Utah. So Utah now has its own state-level REINS Act.
And so what does that act do exactly?
So any regulation that has a major fiscal impact, so what we've defined that as at the state level is a regulatory implementation cost or compliance cost for businesses, for taxpayers, of $2 million or more over a 5-year implementation period, that will automatically be kicked back to you guys, the legislature, who should be making law and crafting law for review. So instead of just being implemented and hey, this regulatory agency says do X, Y, Z. If that analysis says, well, this is going to be a fortune for taxpayers and for businesses to comply with, ultimately the legislature gets final say on. That's what
it's interesting because we put something in a bill this year that actually, if someone's going to run a voter initiative, it basically says that they have to define where the money's coming from and how much it's going to cost. Which I found that it was interesting how some of these outside groups said, well, you're trying to take power away from the people, and you think, before we can pass a law, if it has a fiscal impact, we have to tell
where it's coming
from, and it has to be approved.
And that makes the most. I know we've had a lot of back and forth and some issues over the last year with court saying what can and can't be undone via initiative or referendum right. But the Constitution does say all legislative powers are inherent in the people, but that should be an equal process, right? If the legislative process is, well, here's where the money's coming from, here's what it's doing, the same thing if passing a law through an initiative, that makes sense. If, tell the people where it's coming from.
Yeah, how much it is. That's interesting to me when people make that distinction, because we're a constitutional republic, right? The legislature is the voice of the people, right?
Right, and if people don't like it,
then they vote them out, right? That's the whole idea of representative government, right? And so, in fact, if you go into the House chamber, right above the speaker, it says Vox Populi, right? Voice of the people.
People's house.
This is the people's house. This is the voice of the people. Yeah. And so it's interesting when people try to distinguish between who are the people and who the legislature is. Yeah. And in fact, that's why members of the House get elected every 2 years. Because they're supposed to be very close to that voice.
Voices can change, absolutely.
So, well, any parting thoughts? I think that REINS Act is an interesting one, right?
One of our top priorities, and we're glad we got that unanimously.
So that's a national priority then?
Yeah, so
AFP?
At the congressional level as well, yes. So it's a national priority in our states. So we've had 5 or 6 state chapters run something similar to rein in the regulatory state in their own home states.
And so we have that in Utah now.
Utah now has that, and that is still a priority at the federal level. Mike Lee's been a huge champion on that.
And you guys actually helped with that bill, right?
Yeah. Here in the state? Yeah. That was a top priority. Representative Wilcox ran that bill, and we got that through on the final day of the session. So I was really hoping that that bill would get through. So. Any parting thoughts? Happy to be here, and if people want to get involved with Americans for Prosperity, like I said, prosperityelevated.com, and we are always looking to grow our activist base and get people involved in this process. Yeah, just scroll down to the bottom of this podcast page, and you'll find a link. Yeah, thank you very much. Nice having you, Kevin. It's great to be here. Yeah, and we'll see you guys next week.